Nigel Farage is on the side of Jimmy Savile?
I think the British public will see it for what it is. I'm 38 years old, and I know, as Nigel said, politics is a rough and tumble game. I think it's one of the most disgusting things I've ever heard a politician say. Look, you can debate a piece of legislation, but to resort to that kind of ad hominem slur is disgraceful. But look, it's also not surprising. Labour, it is the act of a government that is flailing in desperation. The latest YouGov poll puts us 7 points ahead of Labour. That's before the Corbyn party starts registering in these polls, at which point that's going to go to 12 to 15 points. Starmer's collapse in terms of his favourability rating is without precedent in history. And I want to make this point too. If this is about protecting children, then you'll have to explain to me why Section 44 of the Act gives none other than Mr. Carl himself the ability to unilaterally order Ofcom to rewrite the rules on his whim without parliamentary scrutiny, or Section 179 that creates a threshold of illegality, forcing not just making this speech illegal, but forcing social media companies to proactively censor and take down speech that is, and I quote, causes non-trivial psychological harm. Who determines that? Who determines what non-trivial psychological harm is? So all of that stuff, it's a 200-page act. Most of the people talking about it, frankly, haven't read it. We have. And by the way, any student of history will tell you that tyranny is always presented in the warm fuzz of safety and security, and in the hope that nobody reads the small print.
I think Zia's right about that. It is really hard to understand, but the question is, was it worth making the effort in the first place? And I think what I would say is, although I take many of your criticisms of it, it's good that a nation state like Britain is actually trying to say we're going to try and set the rules, rather than leaving it to tech companies, who I don't think can be trusted.
Thank you, Dominic. Should Peter Kyle apologise for what he said today about Nigel Farage?
I mean, I can't answer for Peter, and I actually think this particular argument, this argument is extremely unedifying, the one between Peter and Nigel. I think the serious point here is about the protection of children and the protection of the public from serious illegal harm. It is illegal, and I defy you, Mr. Yusuf, to say that it's okay for certain websites to be promoting terrorism and nothing should happen. I defy you to say that it's absolutely okay for websites and algorithms deliberately to target children with pornography, and you're okay with that. I defy you actually to look at any of the 17 forms of crime that are listed in the Ofcom guidance and say you're okay with them being promoted. You couldn't possibly be. As for the ability of Peter Carl, the Secretary of State for Science and Technology, to be able to write regulations, that is a completely usual piece of legislation. That's what happens when you have a huge piece of legislation. It's 200 pages, as you say. I have also read every one of them because I was an MP at the time. I read every one of them. You come out with something that's important as a principle, which Jonathan has said, it's important that a country decides we do not want children to be harmed by pornography, access to terrorism, which you, Jonathan, said yourself in your evidence to Ofcom, is extremely dangerous because children are particularly vulnerable.
There is a tension, isn't there, Zia, where if you're a free speech absolutist, then all that is fine, but there are laws about what you can and can't see and what you can and can't promote. And this bill is saying that children in particular should not have access to exactly the things that Thangham was talking about.
Well, I defy you to explain why it is that in the 48 hours or so that this legislation is really bitten and has come into force. Let's look at what's actually been censored. Explain to me why Katie Lamb's speech in the House of Commons, by the way, where there's supposed to be parliamentary privilege, where she excoriated the track record of those who covered up the grooming gangs, for example, that has been censored on X. You'd have to I defy you, with respect, I let you finish your point, please let me respond. I defy you to explain why it is that a transcript of the testimony inside court with regards to the grooming gangs has also been censored on X, and many anti-government tweets have been censored on X. Footage of an anti-migrant protest in Leeds has been censored on X. You will have to explain to me why those things are happening, and whether you're proud that this legislation has created an environment where you talk about protecting predators. By censoring that speech, what we are doing is encouraging the cover-up that allowed predators to prey on women in this country.
Last time I looked, I'm not in charge of X. That would be your friend, Mr. Elon Musk. If Mr. Elon Musk thinks that is within the confines of the legislation, he needs to consult Ofcom about the guidance. I've looked at the guidance. Maybe you haven't, maybe Mr. Musk hasn't. Maybe Mr. Musk is too busy, but he's in charge of X.
So you wash your hands of the consequences of the legislation that
censored X. I think you'll find if X has taken something
let's move on actually to the role of tech and the tech bosses in this. This is Matt Motor. He is a former senior researcher at Meta. He told Newsnight that Silicon Valley will be watching what's happening in the UK and taking action.
I have every confidence that these companies will fight tooth and nail to resist having to adhere to these new requirements. And I think that donating to Donald Trump and trying to curry favor with him is in part motivated by their desire to get assistance in fighting off this foreign regulation of their products.
So, Thangham, there's clearly a big fight here coming between the government and Silicon Valley. Is that a fight the government's ready to have?
Well, I think Pete Carl spent quite a lot of time in Silicon Valley actually making good constructive relationships with tech firms. I actually share some of Jonathan's concerns about where tech firms might have more strength than perhaps we want them to, and I think we need to look ahead here. The government have promised an AI bill. The tech firms, this might just be a warm-up act for the sort of fuss they're going to make about regulating AI. In a democratic society, from a social democrat point of view, and I am a social democrat, we want a well-regulated capitalism, and well-regulated capitalism is one that gives the maximum amount of freedom but protects people from the maximum amount of harm.
Which is, I think, just to deal with Zia's point, I think there is a distinction between operational decisions and having law. I mean, we have laws against theft, for example, but there will be occasionally wrong arrests and people be arrested when they're not guilty of theft. And I think you have to accept that there will be teething problems. And I don't want to underplay the importance of free speech, but there's going to be a period of time, isn't there, as we adjust to this really, really difficult thing which has come at us like a train and dealing with it rather than simply saying it's too difficult. So as between saying let's do nothing and doing something, I think I'm probably in the something camp, but I do think the Act needs to be clearer. I do think Ofcom have to make it clearer to the public what they are doing, and oversight and all of that by MPs, by regulators is a good thing.
But you've hit the nail on the head here. What's being demanded of what has actually happened, if you don't trust the tech companies, what has happened now is that what is deemed legal or not is effectively being handed to the tech companies, because it's not retail staff. It's not retail staff. It's not retail staff who make a determination about who to arrest and who not to. It is the police who do that, and then it's the judiciary who then make a call on it. And I will say this too, as someone who's run a business, right? If you create a perverse incentive, which is what this bill does, look at the penalties, 10% of global revenues. These are global platforms of which the UK is an infinitesimal proportion of their revenue. Look at the penalties for management, potential jail time. If you create those perverse incentives, what are they going to do? They're going to be over-censorious. They're going to be overzealous. Why? Because that is the rational thing to do. Anyone who is not, it isn't Elon Musk himself who makes these decisions. It is AI algorithms. It is AI algorithms. It is AI algorithms that make these decisions. It is AI algorithms that make these decisions writ large. And what you are now doing, if you don't trust the tech companies, then this is the last act that you would want to support, because what has happened now is it is Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk and every social media magnate that will make a determination as to what British people can or cannot see. Because you've created legislation here that says any content that is, quote, legal but harmful must be taken down lest the management teams face jail.
Is it your contention that there is nothing on the internet that should be restricted in front of children?
Of course not.
But that is what this bill is trying to do. So, but you want to repeal the whole thing. You're not talking about amending it to change the parameters of it. You just want to give it the whole thing.
A new legislation specifically targeted at protecting children. So, first of all, someone who built a tech company and understands tech, frankly, unlike the dinosaurs who actually wrote this bill, what we need to do is ensure that children are actually protected. What we actually haven't talked about here is this act makes children less safe. The evidence of that is 4 of the top 5 most downloaded apps in the Apple App Store as we speak are VPNs. These are virtual networks that allow children to spoof their location anywhere in the world. The 13 to 16-year-olds, anyone who's encountered a 13 to 16-year-old these days will tell you they will run rings around most baby boomers who draft this legislation. And what that then means, they're much more likely to go to places like the dark web. And I want to say this too. If you're a parent, it's really important you know this. Don't be lulled into a false sense of security. If you set parental controls and monitoring with your ISP, with Sky Internet, EE Internet, BT Internet, those VPNs defeat
let's not all talk at the same time, because that's no good for anyone. There's clearly a bigger question. Are there other approaches? Australia has gone to the whole hog and said they're going to ban social media for under 16s. Is that something that could happen here?
Well, it could, but it's not what happened in the Online Safety Act, is it? And what happened in the Online Safety Act...
But that was a bill that the Labour government inherited from the Conservatives. So the Labour government could do something new.
We had called for it. As the shadow leader of the House for many, many months, I stood up every Thursday morning, whenever it was, and asked where the Online Safety Bill was. And then it came.
You've changed your mind tonight.
I've changed my mind on the Australian approach.
Okay.
I used to think the Australian approach was completely idiotic, but then I met someone who said, you know what, Jonathan, it's true that we'll never be able to enforce, and we're not going to arrest lots of children for going on social media, but it allows parents just to have like a really simple standard, and they can say to their kids, you cannot go on it because it's the law. And I don't think actually, with all the clever footwork that's in the Online Safety Act, bear in mind, Ofcom, they haven't got that much money compared to the tech companies. And when they have a big battle with the musts and whatever, they're going to end up losing or be quite conservative about it. I think probably in the end, under 16,
just
off social media.
On that, because Zia, what do you think about the idea of banning social media?
Well, it's a totally different conversation. Then let's have that conversation. Let's not start creating legislation that forces censorship of protests against migrant hotels, which is the effect of the legislation, and that is undeniable. Look, if we want to have look, clearly there's a whole body of evidence, longitudinal evidence, cross-culturally, which suggests that social media for under 16s does have a negative impact. I want to be really clear, Nigel and Reform, we do care about young people's safety. We understand technology too, and that is why we are so against this act. We will repeal it and replace it with legislation that actually protects children.